Let me take you back all the way to the end of last year, where I was in deep awareness that there was a lot of things that were needing to change in my life. The offers that I was selling were feeling heavy. The delivery of my services were feeling heavy, but my life was also feeling heavy. There was ways where I couldn't even show up to my daily existence because I was just so tired and I was so heavy. There was nothing inspiring. There was nothing giving me vitality. And I'm a human design generator with a sacral response. And so having no response at all for an extended period of time was like really disorienting. Okay. So I had prioritized for myself that I was going to focus on causing some vitality in my life in places where there just hadn't been for a while, whether it was because I was desensitized or disassociated or whatever the case might be, that I was going to put some deliberate attention on those areas. One of those areas being my social life. Another one of those areas being my love life. Another one of those areas was redefining some stuff in my business. And so immediately, as I started putting attention on different areas of my life, some very key things became hard to ignore. And one of the most key things was how little I was a part of my own life story. It was really hard at first for me to realize until I started to embrace the fact that I wanted to be at the center of my own story. I wanted to be the main character of my own life. And so I started putting my attention on that. I was like, I want to give a fuck about my client. I want to give a fuck about my business. I want to give a fuck about the evolution that people get when they work with me. But I also want to give a fuck about my friendships. I want to give a fuck about my family. I want to give a fuck about a lot, right? And I've got some fucks to give about shit, and I'm going to be discerning about where they go. But up until that point, the fucks that I was giving was about my past, was about my trauma, was about my healing, was about keeping me in this mental state of always feeling lack in myself. There was this internal belief that was being reinforced by the very industry that we're all a part of, right? Personal growth, development, spiritual evolution. But I was almost internally abusing myself through a lot of the work. I couldn't show up to life and be messy. I couldn't go out and fuck around and find out. I had this internal ideology that I needed to do everything perfect, that I needed to do the most conscious thing, that I needed to do the most spiritually evolved thing, because if I didn't, there would be some sort of reprimand or repercussion that would drain me and would leave me exhausted. And so my attempt to control my own energetic levels that were already fucking nothing because I was so disassociated from like feeling alive. My attempt to control that was like, well, I'll just show up perfect. That way I don't get even more depleted on the back end of doing imperfect action. Here's the problem with that. It's bullshit. It's not fair. It requires us to uphold a insane standard that would be cruel to maintain. By the end of December, I was becoming more and more aware of this. I was very clear that there was a way where I almost like disconnected from what made me feel alive and what made me feel bountiful and abundant and excited and full of personality. Because, oh my God, I'm going to get reprimanded on the other end, or there's going to be some sort of consequence for being that bountiful person that I am. I mean, look at me. I'm glowing all the time. Now, by the end of December, that is when things got really clear for me. And I was like, I need to really pay attention to where I'm putting my energy. I really needed to discern where my energy was going and why. All of a sudden, I gave birth to License to Print Money, which is a process that I go through with my business every year. But I was teaching it to other people so they could kind of see it. And I'll give you the gist of it. Basically, you go through your offers and you really explore what is depleting your energy and what's not, and how you can start to cultivate a different path. Even if that means taking a risk, even if that means jumping off a deep end, even if that means going a more slower pace than you'd prefer, right? Like allowing your vitality to determine your next direction. I knew that I needed to change mine, and I wanted to share with other people how they could start to shift theirs. What was blatantly obvious for me was to let go of teaching money. But up until that point, teaching money was what I was known for. That's what my resume is. That is what people expect me to teach them. That is what my entire identity had been kind of centered around in terms of service. Even though my own heart wasn't in it, even though I felt heavy, even though to deliver the service was exhausting for me. There was a way where I was showing up to serve every single month. I was promoting things. Like I was really showing up, but at the same time, sacrificing my own heart. Interesting. interesting that my business became the center of my story, not me. I also had to really own the fact that every time I wanted to go out and live, I was processing the present moment through the lens of my past, centering my past instead of my present. The fact that I wanted to grow and evolve different ways of relating to people. What was I centering? My past trauma, my pain, my heartbreak. All of these things were showing me that I was centering other aspects of life instead of my own energy, instead of my own values, instead of what makes me feel alive. The more I became aware of what was getting centered, the more heartbreaking it was. Because once you start to realize that you're not even the main character of your own fucking life, it is hard to ignore from there. You start seeing like all of your belief systems and all of the ways where you started to internalize shit that's truly not helpful, not supportive, and really not useful for your everyday life. In fact, all of the things that I was centering was having me feel even more depleted, even more lethargic, even more dead and disassociated. Because for me to be the main character, it means reinvesting my energy in what's expansive. And I simply was not. I was reinvesting my energy in the idea that I needed to serve the way that I was serving. I was reinvesting my energy in the healing that was projected to me. And all of those things were just leaving me more and more and more and more less of myself. As the winter waned, I was like very clear of all of this. April came. I was like, I'm letting go of some of my offers. I reduced my income by $4,000 reoccurring revenue. Like I really let myself let things go. As I was doing that, right? Readjusting my energetic investment, readjusting where I was going to reinforce my life, where I was going to have my life be centered around. As I was doing, I started having these amazing, wonderful experiences. I went to adult summer camp. I met someone. I went to Orlando. I was hanging out with friends, having beach days, going to rugby. Like all of a sudden, my life started to expand more because I wasn't focused on I need to heal some aspect of me or I need to serve more. There was no ounce of martyrdom that was coming through. And martyrdom is a pattern that I've had for years where it's like everything else is more important than me, that everyone else is more important than me, that everything is far more significant and requires my investment of energy before and beyond myself. It sounds like selflessness, right? It's like, oh, well, she just served her clients. And it was like, actually, it wasn't selfless. It was selfish to the pattern of self-sacrifice. Because if I didn't sacrifice myself, I felt like I was failing, like I wasn't doing my part, like I wasn't showing up. But meanwhile, my mental health, my emotional health, my spiritual well-being, all of that started to go down because of how secretive and how silent this pattern does show up. You can have the most bountiful business ever. In fact, that's what I did, right? I had $15,000 months every single month. And I just like was showing up to the job, right? I would show up, I would open, I would deliver something really potent and transformative. But on the back end, I was so exhausted. I was so tired. And I was like, this isn't it. My life is centered around my business and my life is centered around my trauma, but my life isn't holistic. My life isn't the story that I really want, because if I die tomorrow, it's just going to be me in the box, burned or buried. It's just me. And so if all I have is my business and my healing, am I going to be proud of my time on this earth? And this is one of the things that when it comes to personal growth, when it comes to spiritual development, whatever, we forget that we came to this planet to be fucking human, which means that we came for the profound and the profane. Your life story is not supposed to be all fucking cupcakes and unicorn farts. It's supposed to have the ebbs and the flows, but there becomes a point where we can be attached to the ebb and be so addicted to the ebb, the lack, the lethargy of it, that we don't consciously redirect our energy. And so our life becomes centered around things that are energetically depleting, the things that are heavy to uphold, things that are cruel to sustain. But we do it because we have some sort of morality programming that says, if I don't, I'm bad. If I don't, I'm not a good practitioner. If I don't, I'm not this. Instead of, there is no fucking reality, I promise you, that you live in a world or a universe or a galaxy or a plane or a timeline. There is no timeline. I don't care what anyone says. There is no timeline where you sacrificing yourself, your well-being, your agreements that you have to your heart and soul. There's no timeline that says you have to do that. In fact, the timeline that every single person, every single being is on in this fucking planet is how can you stay committed to yourself and do the things that you value? And this is the thing that people get tripped up on, is that our values get reprioritized all the time, right? So a single girl is like not going to prioritize raising children. Then she has children and she's like, oh my God, I got to prioritize some like deeper boundaries. Values get reprioritized all the time. We don't often prioritize them based on us. We prioritize them based on external conditions and external expectations. And in my experience, the expectations that we're reordering our values by are uncommunicated. And so it's our interpretation of how we need to reorder those values rather than saying, okay, hold on. How do I want to order these values? How do I want to prioritize these values? Not, I assume my boss wants me to go the extra mile, and going the extra mile means staying after 6 p.m. And so therefore you sacrifice time with your family, time with your partner, time at the gym, time to cook a healthy meal. You sacrifice all the things that are value you because of the perceived expectation of the external world, rather than like, I show up to work, I do a good job, but I still have my energy going to other places that I really value. And this is the crux of what we're going to be doing in Masterpiece. Because if we're going to live a very masterful life, a life that is beautiful, a life that is complex, and a life that is worth fucking reading, then there are things that we have to be really honest about, that we have to either pull our energy away from because it's centering our story around it, or we have to start reinvesting and reallocating our energy so that our story has some depth to it. Let me be really honest with you. Would you really want to hear my story of my life if it proceeded to be, I wake up, I go to work, I leave work, I go home? Is that really a story you would want to read? Now I'm going to ask you, is that really a story that you would want to live? The truth of the matter is most people would say no. And that's obviously a hyperbolic example. But when you start to say, no, fuck that, I am my own main character. I am my own Roman fucking empire. My values, my energy come first. There's a realization that you have to really own that when you do that, you can't be a bad person, because people who value things, right? They value family, they value connection, they value intimacy. Those are values. When you value those things, you're always behaving in accordance with your own internal alignment. So the fear of prioritizing yourself, the fear of being your own Roman Empire gets in the way of you actually being the whole dynamic person that you want to be, with the life story that has the depth and the gravity and the emotion and the potency that you really truly desire. I know this because when I look at my entire life, the places where I have centered my identity, centered my energy, centered everything, while in the grand scheme of things, people would say that it looked like focus and discipline and being so goal oriented, what it really was is that I had nothing else going on. And I needed that one thing to be so fucking successful, because if it wasn't successful, then I had to be with the fact that my entire life sucked. The other day I was at the beach and I was having a conversation with some friends, and we were talking about how the people who take their work way too seriously often don't have lives, right? So the guy who's like upper management and is like, oh my God, like you got to really put your head down and you've got to do the work, blah, 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 blah. He's already doing that because he has nothing else to do. And when you look at like middle to lower level employees, they have other shit to do. They're like, I don't care about the same things you care about because I've got other things that require my energy too. And so when you really look at who has the more holistically wealthy life, the people who have their health, the people who have their connections, the people who have their desires, like they're still moving forward in life. They're just not doing it in a way where all of their energy is being centered around something that is ultimately depleting and not nourishing all other areas. So when I am deep in my workaholism, I don't want to go out. I don't want to go hang out with my friends. I don't want to go travel. I don't want to see family. I don't want to go date when my life is centered around my work. And truth be told, that is what my life has been for the four years. And so I would have to consciously put myself in these weird circumstances to go dating. But my orientation was still to focus on my business. Now, that doesn't sound like a bad thing, right? People, they gotta have some focus. I argue that if all of your energy is going into business, into love, into whatever, into any one area or any two areas, rather than being dispersed into all areas, you risk losing your alignment because all of your energy is being doubled down into one area. And so you're not going to pay attention to the subtle cues that something needs to change. You're not going to pay attention to the internal guidance that says, hey, maybe try this out. You're going to focus on what works and you're going to prioritize what works above and beyond everything else because you can't afford for that to fail. You can't afford for your business to fail because your life has no vitality in it. You can't afford for your relationship to fail because your career and your external world has no vitality running through it. When you don't have a holistic view of your life, love, business, money, all of the things, and you're not holding it all and you're not balancing it all, you are taking way more risk than's actually true. You're risking your heart, you're risking your soul, you're risking your alignment because now you're doubling down saying, I need to have this outcome. Otherwise, why did I sacrifice my love life, my family life, my well-being, mental and physical well-being? Like, why did I sacrifice all of that? Well, because you have to sacrifice those things if you're centering around any one thing. If you're centering around your trauma, you are sacrificing your present connection because everything you see is through this lens of how am I going to get hurt or how am I not going to get hurt? And so you need to ensure you're never hurt, risking everything that could potentially hurt you because you can't afford a setback because all of your energy is going into your healing. This is how people end up removing themselves from living life fully. You center yourself in business so you don't have a social life. You center yourself in trauma and healing so you never go out and interact with the real world. You center one thing, all of your energy gets like dumped in and you basically shoot yourself in the foot. In Masterpiece, it is about orienting back to you being the center of your own life and knowing and trusting and seeing and witnessing that is the most powerful position you can be in. That when I am fully centered in this is what I value, right? So one of the things that I really value is that humanity is profound and profane, meaning I'm no better than anybody else. I'm just out here living life. When I'm centered around that, I'm mouthier online. I'm way more willing to market. So all of a sudden, I'm not just centered on my business. I'm centered on my values. I'm centered on what's significant for me. When I value my health, girl, take a look at my skin. I'm glowing for a reason. Yeah, there's a filter on here to make it a little darker. But like when I focus on that, I become more radiant. When I focus on making sure I'm getting my 10K steps and starting to do Pilates in my home, like when I'm doing these things, there is a visible impact that everyone gets to see. But when I don't prioritize those things, when I don't prioritize my health, my well-being, my love life, my sex life, when I don't prioritize the things that aren't just business and I just focus on business, my business may be very successful, but the rest of my life is not. And this is the thing that I would have people really, really start getting discerning about is the people that you're following, are they being honest about how good their life is? And I'm not saying that everybody's life needs to be good, but be really honest about it, right? Like my life is just certainly not good all the time. Like I get really high highs, really low lows, but I want to be honest about it because there's a reality that's getting missed in a lot of marketing content because everyone wants to have this like aspirational thing. And I've lived a very aspirational life, but it only looks aspirational when I'm hiding the reality of it. Your masterpiece accepts reality. Your masterpiece requires the depth of the grit that you go through in life as much as the beauty of the bounty that happens. That is what creates a masterpiece. It has depth and dimension. But when we are so purely focused on one area of life, instead of the holistic view of the entire fucking story and every subplot within it, all of our energy gets funneled and we can't actually see what could be possible. What could be possible in my business when I'm focused on having love, having sex, having health, having my physical wellness, having family connections, friendship, intimacy. What is actually possible in my business when I'm not only focused on that? When I'm focused on other areas? What's possible for my life? What's possible for your relationship when you're not so focused on the relationship? So maybe consider that this 6-month private and group container is an exploration of what's actually possible in all areas of life when you stop funneling all of your fucking power into needing one area to be successful. I'd much rather see you have all areas, have depth and dimension, and you trusting yourself to navigate all of it. And if that's something that you're interested in, I highly encourage you to join us in Masterpiece. Inside the container, you are getting a group call every month to know that you're not alone navigating life. And you get a private call every month. The reason for that is I want to make sure that you feel supported in multiple areas of life, because that's what the clients who work with me who get the most results aren't just bringing me one area of life. We're looking at it as like interweaving plot lines and seeing, well, what happens when this plot thickens and this one stagnates? What do we need to do to keep all of those things moving? When you are the main character of your own story and your life is centered around the promise you have to yourself, I can guarantee you that all areas of life expand. And they expand in a way that gets you much more excited to be a participant in your own life. But if all of your energy is going into one area, it starts to stagnate. It starts to get way too pressurized and it's not sustainable. My pure focus on business, my pure focus on money was not sustainable. And I could feel it happening for months before I started to make the transition out of teaching money. And yeah, like you can still get the programs and whatnot, but like I don't actively teach it anymore, right? So as I was transitioning, I knew that that transition needed to happen months before it actually started taking place, because there was too much pressure in my business to be successful because all other areas of my life were not, right? There was too much pressure in me needing to be healed because all other areas were saying, well, if you're not healed, you don't get to have success. You prioritize your pain, you center around your pain, you center around your problems, then all other areas start to fall apart. I see you being able to adjust, respond to problems, but not centering around them, not centering your entire life force in what needs to shift and evolve. So I'm going to leave you guys there with that. I would love for you guys to send me a message if any part of this live stream resonated with you. And definitely if you want to explore coming into Masterpiece. There will be a wait list for those of you who are like, I can't make this first round. I would like to waitlist for a potential second round. I can't promise that there will be another Masterpiece. But what I do know is that if you want in on this one, this will be the lowest price that this particular container is offered at. This is the first time I'm running Masterpiece. This is the first time that I'm really owning that I'm here to teach people and to guide people and mentor people into having a fucking human existence, into being human again, into having the money, the sex, the life, the love, the business, all of those things, because I have way too much knowledge in all of those areas to let those be siloed and like separate. I want to give it all to my clients and make sure that you are constantly upgrading and updating all areas of your life rather than centering around any one. Awesome. I look forward to hearing from you in my DMs. Until next time. Mwah.